There's a lot of mystification in modern spirituality around the idea of the self. People say things like the self is an illusion, or they talk about my authentic self or my true self. And sometimes that language points to something real, and sometimes it's just about social control dressed up in spiritual garments. Here's how it works. At the center of every high control group, whether we're talking about a dysfunctional family or a spiritual community, is the same phenomenon: enmeshment. In healthy systems or relationships, each person has a clear emotional perimeter. My feelings, your feelings, my will, your will. But in enmeshed systems, that perimeter dissolves. Suddenly, disagreement is betrayal. Discomfort is danger, and the assertion of boundaries becomes unspiritual. You don't know where you end and the group begins. The more tightly knit or family-like the culture, the more this enmeshed pattern shows up, and the less distance you have to clearly evaluate exactly what is happening to you. The group's preferences start to feel like your intuitions. You start to conform without even realizing you're doing it. Some groups even aestheticize this. And this is where terms like beauty and harmony come in. Suddenly, telling the truth is shit-stirring. Setting a normal boundary is rocking the boat. Just saying no means you're somehow being divisive. And when beauty and harmony become criteria for advancement, that's not spirituality. That's social control with a smile. And because beauty is inherently subjective, you have to ask, whose idea of beauty is it that you are being asked to conform to? Who gets to define harmony? And what parts of yourself do you have to erase in order to be considered mature or eligible by these people? Once you're enmeshed, then emotional manipulation can step in to become the control mechanism. It can look like love bombing. We adore you when you conform. Or shame. Your honesty is demoralizing people. Or just weaponized silence. You're being divisive. Your nervous system learns to scan the environment for subtle shifts in tone, in language, in approval. And it course corrects automatically, sometimes even before a thought begins to form. Selfhood always requires some courage. Speaking up and saying no is often really scary, especially when you're new to a group. But if you've been part of something for months or even years, and when you think of saying no, you immediately start to feel this fear, like you might be rocking the boat or causing drama or something, there is a chance that you are being trained like an animal. It doesn't matter what jargon is being used for it. In my opinion, at least, it is unhealthy. This is not hypothetical to me. When I came into spirituality, I thought I had a strong sense of self. I was thoughtful, I was reflective, I asked questions, I was skeptical, I wanted to serve. But over time, I started to notice the small, subtle acts of self-betrayal. And because I'm a self-critical person, because I was encouraged to consider my part in things, I always spent a lot of time assuming that part of the problem was coming from me. Not the relationship I was in, not the system that I was in, not the way that spiritual language was being used to punish the truth, dissolve clarity, and elevate conformity over courage. But the healthier my sense of self grew, the more comfortable I became saying no, setting boundaries, protecting my time, my emotional energy, and my clarity, the less I felt like I fit in to a community premised on true will and authentic true self. Let's get even more specific. There's a framework that I have found helpful for pulling apart these phenomena. It's called the B.I.T.E model, and it explains how high control groups function on 4 levels: behavior, information, thought, and emotion. Let me show you how it plays out. Behavior control. You are told who you have permission to socialize with or be friends with. Policy gets retrofitted in real time to constrain you, but not others. You're discouraged from taking actions that are perfectly reasonable to avoid making certain important people uncomfortable. Information control. Your social media posts get screenshotted and passed up the chain of command. Rumors circulate before you've even had a chance to speak. You're counseled or reprimanded for things you didn't say in rooms you weren't even in. Thought control. You write or say something thoughtful but critical, and it's treated as disrespect. You're reminded of your oaths, of your duty to promote harmony or something. Disagreement is framed as disloyalty. Clarity as arrogance. Instead of asking people why they might be anxious, they're told not to be. Emotional control. You're love-bombed when you comply, quietly punished when you don't. You're reassured, not because you're safe, but so that you will remain compliant. You feel fear every time you even think about setting a boundary. The cumulative effect? You no longer trust your instincts. You censor yourself before anybody else does. And maybe you wake up one day and realize you don't even feel safe having a sense of self around these people. If this sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. You're not crazy. This kind of stuff happens all the time in spiritual spaces. Here's the truth. The point of spiritual practice is to help you become more yourself, not less. And certainly not someone else's idea of who you should be. Any system that asks you to dull your clarity, question your instincts, or suppress your no in the name of beauty and harmony, that's not a spiritual path. In my opinion, that is social control and the demand for performance. I don't care how much jargon of personal growth they clothe it in. It's a simulation that trades sovereignty for status. So be careful. Watch for the subtle or not so subtle ways that some communities might try to erase your sense of self. It can start with beautiful language. It can start with service. It can start with love. It can start with a longing for connection. But if it ends in silence, shame, and the slow death of your own clarity, walk away.